Welcome to Higher Ground. I'm Kathleen Smith. Yes, it's Kathleen on Twitter. It is just so exciting and emotionally inspiring to me to see this room fill. Wow, I promised myself I wouldn't cry. Anyway, I started this 7 years ago because I'm in recruitment marketing, and I knew that the conversation was not happening in a valuable and safe space for people in our industry to find a job. So I asked a few friends to come in and do resume review and career coaching, asked a few people to do presentations that would help you with your career. And now over 7 years, it's grown to a full room. Wow. Woo. So let's talk about failing, because we all know that we hate to fail. God, I hate to fail. I'm the eldest of 5 kids. I hate to fail. I have to be perfect all the time. But you know what? Failing is the best way to learn, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, yeah. So Wes is going to talk about failing upwards in your career. Let's give it up for Wes.
So for those unaware, the previous speaker did not drink his water, so I have bonus water. No, my water. My water. Anyway. So thanks for coming to this talk. You know what's kind of fun is when I was looking at how to do this, I was looking up like presentations, surely someone's talked about this before. No one's presented this yet. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time anyone's presented how to fail upwards. So everyone in this room is a trailblazer today. So that's news, right? That's pretty cool. And everyone can hear me okay, yeah? Cool, all right, cheers for that. Okay, so. One more thing to know, and this is just a little bit of a warning, as I spent far too much time on real cringe inspirational stock photos. I spent real time on this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry in advance. So, failing upwards, let's try this out. Let's start with, who am I? My name is Wes. Hi. How you going? Hey. You know, I kind of move around a lot. I currently live in Canada, not Canadian. But before then, I lived in the Netherlands, Japan, China, United States. These are places I've worked and lived for the last 15 years or so. Also New Zealand, UK, and Belgium from time to time. That's a story on its own, honestly. That's not this talk, that's another talk. But it's just kind of what I do. My current role, what I do these days, is I'm currently the Chief Security Officer for a company in Toronto called OrderGrid. I'm also a data privacy advocate. I try to do what I can for Electronic Frontier Foundation. Feel free to support them a lot. Oh, sorry. We have the fan, so you need to... Oh yeah, the fan. Yeah, that's my competition. Yeah, okay. I'm stepping forward so you can hear me better. So anyway, yeah, and I'm also a hacker as well. I put that on my professional list. Not that I hold that title. It's more that actually helps my job. That actually helps me do my job. So it's kind of what I do to help the main gig, so to speak. On the personal side, I do lots of running. I do weight training. I play lots of video games when I have the time. I walk around the world sometimes, and I also hack in my free time. My current hobby horse these days is RFID badge cloning. Who thinks that's cool? Because I think that's... Yeah? Oh, so many friends. Yes. Okay. But why am I like this? I like puzzles and I seek novelty. That's kind of the short version. Also anxiety. So that's enough of me. Before we start on this, though, just a few things just to kind of level set and manage expectations a little bit. I'm going to start by clarifying what is failing upwards in the first place. I'm going to tell you my story. I'm really sorry about that. You're going to have to sit through my story to hear how to do this thing. And then I'm going to set some scenes for you, set some mental space on what mental angle you should find yourself in to try this out. Then we're actually going to get to the steps on failing upwards in the first place. And then we're going to do some final words as we go. And this is a really long presentation because it's really nuanced, and I'm sorry for that. But if you want to ask questions, feel free to. You're going to dislodge me a little bit, but I promise you're also going to put me back on track at the same time. So feel free to yell things out. Hey, you're wrong. Please do. That's going to help me focus, bring me up to speed. Some assumptions. I'm expecting that everybody in this room you want to get ahead, and that you know where you want to go, and that you have some idea of the job you want to have. This is largely based on the idea of rising into management, because I think we all kind of, at some point, decided we don't want to be on call anymore. So, yeah, it's kind of like that. Also, I'm making another assumption, which is that most of you are already inside the IT or security space already. If you're breaking into the field, this is also applicable, just less so. And then also, another assumption is that I'm assuming you're willing to get weird. Okay, yeah, perfect. Some disclaimers. Your mileage will vary. Your mileage will vary because this is a very nuanced subject. It's very personal to every person. The reason why I'm telling you my story is because that's how I can give you examples. It's going to be different for everybody. Another thing is I want to say out loud, I see my privilege. I recognize that I am cis male. I recognize I'm Caucasian and vaguely tall. These things do contribute to this. They do, to the success that I've found. That said, the reason why I'm talking about it in the first place is because I have seen people who are ethnic minorities and gender minorities do the same process. Again, just like me, accidentally. Because I don't think anyone tries to fail upward necessarily until tomorrow, right? But in any case, it's almost always accidental. And I've seen people who are not like me also succeed this way. And just a bit of a warning. This looks easy and is hard. By trying to go through this process, you're basically putting yourself in a position of vulnerability as a means of succeeding long term. You're putting your stakes up high. I don't expect anyone to risk their jobs over this. Another thing I want to say out loud. But the way this works is that you're going to have fun with it. And I mean that. It really helps to have a good time doing this because that's going to sell the charisma, which is going to get you there in the first place. So that's a lot of disclaimers. I talked too long. Let's discuss failing upwards. What does that even mean? Well, if you look it up on Google these days, it looks like this: to advance in one's career despite failure. And, you know, the thing is, that's not exactly the thing I'm talking about today. That's not exactly the process of failing upwards. If you've ever had a boss who is just like, how are you managing me? You know, he failed upwards. He found himself in a role that he is not trained to do by doing a job above his rank too long, and somehow he's managing others. That's this sentence: to advance in your career despite failure. That's career resilience, not failing upwards. There's a very big difference here. That's not what I'm talking about today. You can be strong, powerful, and employed, but what we're talking about today is how to rise. So, but why would you fail upward? Why not just go the normal path of work hard and get promoted? Because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. There's no reason, not one reason a manager has to promote you for a good job. They're literally disincentivized at every single time. How many engineers, analysts in the room, like key stakeholders in the technology level? Yeah. So I'm going to guess each one of you has been told you're really important. Yeah. So the trick is that why you would want to fail upwards is because because you want or need to get an advanced job. Maybe you have bills to pay. Maybe you've got goals. You got that like 8-mile energy on you. You know, good employees don't usually get promoted. Frequently they do, but it's not guaranteed. It's really not. And managers, if you're looking to rise into management, what does a manager do? Truly, I mean, they have job duties, but what does management quality even mean, right? I mean, can anyone give me a manager quality? Babysitters. What else? Meetings. Yes. What's that? Carrot and stick. Yes. Carrot on a stick. Even better. Double it up. Yay! This is a special request. Thank you. This gives me strength. This is, I should explain this, shouldn't I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I did not expect you to do this. Thank you.
Yeah. I
made a special request when I submitted my talk can I please have a giant picture of Princess Irulan from Dune in 1982? This gives me strength. Thank you very much. I need yes. Oh my God, this is thank you. I'm gonna put her right here I'm gonna angle it a little bit so I can see her. No, I can't.
You know what? Let me see when you.
Oh, thank you. Even better. Yes, wonderful. I did not expect this. Oh my God, that is incredible. Never say BSides doesn't take care of their speakers. That is incredible. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You. This guy. Thank you very much. What the hell was I talking about? Anyway, so Dune 1982 was a real classic, but it's really, no, it wasn't that. Let's move on. But the mechanics of failing upwards, let's talk about that. How does failing upwards work mechanically? Like, what is the process of failing upwards? I'm going to go into greater depth on this. This is just a bit of a summary, but the short version is counter-signaling, which in this case, actually, bigger summary. It's subtle, emotional, subconscious cues that you get, and there's also social constructs, like which we'll get to in a moment. So things like counter-signaling, which is, for example, to say something negative to indicate positive, or to bias for action. You know, just doing something is better than doing nothing. Cronyism, frankly, that is the attack surface we're talking about today, is a cronyism. How do you break into it? It's exploitable. And principles of influence. Any social engineers in the room? Oh, see, I figured you would. See that much style? No, that's a social engineer right there. So right here, the social engineers are going to recognize the 6 principles of influence. I'm going to reference 3 of them, which in this case is reciprocity, I give, you give, social proof, we all approve this, or likability, because frankly, that's needed. And I just want to apologize in advance, because the one thing that I really wanted to spend time on, and I can't, is how to build your charisma and your communication skills, because that is how this comes together. I'm sorry, I have resources at the end of the presentation, but we're just going to have to take me on faith that one matters. So, sorry about that. That said, is it really truly a thing people still do? Does this happen all the time? As a matter of fact, it does. 2 articles, 10 years apart. These are things that actually are still subject matter today in business circles. It is extremely normal to find people failing upwards. People are seeing it as a problem because people are getting into jobs that they're not skilled to have. But be that as it may, this is actually a really, really normal thing to do. Every company experiences this. Every company deals with this. This is, in fact, a way of business that goes back as far as corporate life does. So take me on faith on this. Believe me, there's lots of examples of failing upwards. Now, let me go through the boring stuff. Then we'll get to the interesting stuff. So I got to tell you this for the reasons of giving examples. Here's kind of how I got into this and how I failed through this process. On the childhood side, you know, I was into geek stuff, you know, video games and movies mostly, kind of was the audio-visual guy for my family, small hands behind the TV sort of stuff. And I also, in my free time, I messed with my Game Genie. It was a man-in-the-middle device which allowed you to input new codes into games and change the gameplay. This guy knows what I'm talking about. Game Shark is good too. That's PlayStation era. I like it. And so yeah, but and turns out older CRT TVs, turns out you can brick them by playing with the settings too much. So fun fact. Teenage years, I got into martial arts. That was helping my anxiety a lot. Still lots of geek stuff, but now I'm into robotics. Now I'm like building stuff, and I'm social engineering. I did not know that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. And in college years, I was into politics. I flunked out of a double major in politics, in fact. Then I got a degree in education. I couldn't quite pick a lane. And in my free time, I was jailbreaking iPhones and writing a cyberpunk novel. Still in progress. And then early career, while I'm flunking out of university, I figured I'd pick up some retail hospitality work, just kind of pay the bills. And while I'm doing this, people keep asking, hey, Wes knows that, he can fix that. Because at no point in my entire childhood did I connect that I should probably get into technology. Not once did it occur to me, maybe I should pick up tech work as a profession. But I finally eventually did, crawled my way into that space. Starting with a job in China. I was a technical pre-sales in China. Now, for those less aware of the way China sells to China, when you do a business conference and you want people to see your business as prestigious and international, even if it isn't, you hire a white guy to stand there in a suit and be Caucasian and white and in your booth. I was a booth babe for about a while. No, don't talk. You're not supposed to talk. Do not use your terrible Chinese on your customers. Stand there and be Caucasian. But in my free time, I learned some of the technical stuff. And that kind of, but I was doing that to move to Japan, because my goal at the time was in education to be a teacher in Japan for the rest of my life. You know, that worked well. I went back and forth for a while, and I was doing shadow IT the entire time. And it finally occurred to me, maybe I should get into IT eventually. So I pick up this basic IT job, tier 1 help desk at a foreign currency exchange company in downtown Tokyo. And yeah, so there's all that. I finally got there. I got like all the, I can finally, this is my job now. Now I can fix things all the time. And of course, everything's broken, so I see everything needs fixing. So I start off with help desk, and then I see that no one's working on the data center, so I pick up some data center work. Then it morphs into sysadmin. Then it morphs into data center administration, IT risk management, IT compliance, multi-data center administration, project management for the Asia Pacific region. I burned out. I burned out real hard, just like university, only much harder. And there's a separate and parallel lesson to that, which is that if you're going to burn out, just before you do, let go of some of the things that are keeping you, and that you can actually like not burn out as hard. So holding on to everything is how you burn out faster. So pro tip. But anyway, here's where the failure really kicks off is I burned out so hard I had to fall back to the United States for a while. And I picked up a cloud sysadmin job, just something kind of basic, just to get the job done. It was easy to get work, as engineers in the room probably are aware, especially when I was doing literally everything for this company for like a period of 6 months. And so, but they hired me to just basically kind of be there, but it kind of occurred to me as I was in the process of helping with their cloud migration and their systems administration for AWS, it occurred to me, I'm not great at this. Like, I am mediocre. Truly, I am unexceptional. And they did not hire unexceptional. They hired this rock star from Japan. But no, I'm basic. I'm like super basic, really. And I was tired. And so as I was tired, as I was trying to figure out how to go about this job that I signed up for, that I liked, I loved technology. What do I do? And so it's like, you look really pretty tired. You want to just manage the content delivery network? No one likes that. And that's true. No one likes CDNs. No one. Not a one. And so I liked what I liked doing was fine-tuning the WAF. I'm that kind of nerd. And it kind of got me into doing cloud security administration to a lesser degree. Very beginning of breaking into the security space. But the pattern here, I think you're going to start to see, is that I kind of over-delivered over here and under-delivered over here, and they just kind of moved me a little bit, right? That's kind of the pattern is starting to form. Now here is where the task fails successfully. Around 2016, it occurred to me, maybe it's time to move overseas again. No particular reason. And I moved to the Netherlands. I picked up a platform engineer job. And at that point, about 6 weeks in, my boss at the time, I talked to him. I talk to my boss and I say, no one's doing the security stuff for this team. Should someone do that? And it's like, can you do it? Yeah, I can do that. I don't mind. So I got my first security-ish job, in 2016, not that long ago. And at that point, I look around and I say, well, how exactly do I secure this company? There's never been a security person. There still isn't. I'm kind of not it. And it occurs to me, I need to do everything again, just like in Japan, only this time I got to do it from scratch. So I get to work. I go to these meetups after work, and I go to conferences like this and learn about security from zero. I acquaint myself with the words and the terms of the people that would be my peers, and I start kind of like just picking services and technologies off a shelf, and I shove them into a box and make a presentation out of it, put it to the CSO and the CTO, and I do everything. I do the policy, the design, the architecture, everything but the implementation, because I told you I'm a mediocre engineer, right? Mediocre, truly. I had help putting it in place. But I designed it all. I organized it, I set up incident response. I wrote policies, procedures, the governance. I chose my bosses off a shelf, off the org chart. I wrote it all up, and I didn't ask permission. I just started doing it. And I was also, because I was a mediocre engineer, no one expected me to do much more in the job I was hired for. I was doing my on-call rotation. I was making sure the uptime was good. I was okay at my job. But I was also building security from zero. And so that's when it truly failed. That's when the fail upward truly occurred, is right after that, because at a certain point, I finally, a new CISO shows up, and he takes a look at what I built, and he says, "Hey, I see you've built a lot of stuff." It's like, yeah, I'm really glad you're here, because we got a lot of work to do. And he looks and he says, I've been hearing about the work you've been doing. You did all the governance and the risk registration and the stuff I do. It's like, the previous CISO wasn't doing that bit. So he's like, hey, would you like to just be an InfoSec officer? Because I think you're probably really good at that, and I need like 2 guys. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm really tired. And so I worked for 18 months to build an entire security estate from zero, literally the entire thing, minus the implementation, because I'm a mediocre engineer. And I didn't even get to run it. I didn't even get to touch the fruits of my labor. I handed it off to somebody, and I then ran risk management. That's the fail upwards I'm talking about in steps here. Just spoilers. The last part is actually pretty quick and less interesting, which is once you're in management, as a previous speaker was talking about, once you're there, you're kind of there. So at a certain point, about a year into being an InfoSec officer, I'm like, I want a bigger view, and I want to be able to talk to the board, because that's easier for me to just talk to them directly. But the CISO was good at his job, so I'm not going to take his job. So I just took a different company. And then I had to move back to North America for personal reasons. And if I'm going to move, I might as well join an executive team. And so I just asked, and here I am. So, it really is truly like, once you're management, you're management. You can step down, but it's easier to step up at that point. It's just crossing that Rubicon into management. That is the challenge that people generally have, which is what we're talking about. She distracted me. Okay. Anyway, failing upwards. How does that actually work? Here's the details. The mechanics of failing upward. Counter signaling is basically when you indicate something with a negative. You say something with a negative to indicate a positive. It's not exactly like false praise or false modesty. It's more like when who's the actor? Tom Hardy? Is it? Not Tim. It's Tom, right? I always get those mixed up. Thank you. Appreciate it. He's a master at this. He basically will, if you ever see Tom Hardy talk about his movies, he will talk about his personal struggles, and he's not shy. And people love him because he's counter-signaling. He's showing confidence in himself by explaining where he has failed in his life. He's not shy about it. He's not burdened by it. That indicates strength and confidence. Bias for action is another key piece of this puzzle. Even when people fail, the fact that they tried in the first place means that they have actually put some effort into it. They believe in themselves at least enough to put themselves out there. Learning from failure is one thing, but failing again repeatedly, it shows determination. So frankly speaking, the more failures you have, the more determined you look. I'm going to talk about the 90s a lot. if you ever get to talk to me in person, lots of 90s movies in my life. One of them is Cool Runnings. Who's seen Cool Runnings from 1994? Oh my God, fans! I'm home. Anyway, there we go. Perfect. Everybody's involved. So what happens is that they cross the finish line at the end. Spoilers. But they carry their bobsled on their shoulders. They don't get a podium finish. They don't get a medal, but they get applause. They got a movie out of it. They're not good. They're actively bad for 90 minutes, and you actually cry at the end because they finish. Because bias for action means something. These are all subtle signals that we send each other subconsciously. We can't undo this. This is the way we're all hardwired in most cultures. Let's talk about cronyism. It's really about circles of trust. Cronyism is negative because it involves some exclusivity. That's why it's negative. It's pushing people out, not just keeping people in. But here's the attack surface of it. If you consider cronyism an attack surface, this is what it looks like. Here's the vulnerability. Circles equals trust equals bias. What we're talking about is a circle of trust, and when you are inside that circle of trust, you are naturally biased towards other members of that circle. This is not just cronyism. This is families. This is friends. This is professional everything. The biases are not conscious. Once you're vaguely in the vicinity of the circle, you're almost inside it directly. Just being near it, in the orbit of the circle, is generally close enough to gain a minimum amount of trust on its own. So you consider that the vulnerability. The exploit in this context is trust is a measure of time plus exposure. This is networking 101. Literally everything comes back to this. Circles open with time and exposure. So therefore, the actual attack method on cronyism is to just be near it long enough that you finally get in. But that takes too long. I don't like that. No one likes that. So, but counter signaling and bias for action, they kind of click into each other and become a key to help you get through that barrier faster, which we're going to talk about. What's going to kind of make this process go smoother are the principles of influence I discussed earlier. Reciprocity. Get something and you'll give in return. This is why you get free samples at the grocery store, because they want you to buy something. You feel, if you have a soul, which I'm assuming most do, not all, but most, you probably feel at least a little bit bad about taking a sample with no intention of buying the thing, right? Like you kind of do, unless you're I mean, there are people who don't, sometimes me, but frequently you feel at least a little bad. Likewise, if I tell you that, like, I fell off my bicycle, like if we're talking one-on-one, I tell you I fell off my bicycle as a kid, I hurt my shoulder real bad, and I can't lift my shoulder too high now. You're going to feel like, oh, wow, why'd you tell me that, Wes? But then you're going to feel like you're going to want to tell me something about you in return. That's a natural give and take we do as people, as primates, honestly. So reciprocity. Explaining your failures without any burden of guilt or shame or hesitance will give you a sense of not just showing that you're willing to work and you're willing to fail, but also you're opening yourself up, and that lets them open themselves up too, and that creates connections which you can use to break into cronyism a little faster. Social proof is the next piece of this. Ideas are stronger in groups or with backing of others. Are there any psychopaths that just cross the street all the time without looking? I mean, there we go. There's one. There's always one. In a room this big, there's at least one. But you, fine person, you actually give permission to all of us. So as soon as one person does it, the rest of us will try it, right? That's how it is in a meeting room too. If you get into a meeting room and no one says no to it, you've just been approved. So bear that in mind. And then likability again. I'm sorry, I want to give more topics to more time to that, but you got to work on that too. Being a good communicator, being a good listener, and being able to be. You don't. I mean, people talk about being persuasive. You don't have to be persuasive. You just need to be pleasant to talk to. You know. So, in any case, let's talk about the emotional energy we're trying to harness here. We got two role models: Buzz Lightyear and Peter Gibbons. Again, I promised 90s movies, right? We're all about that here. So Buzz Lightyear, I don't know how many of you grew up with it, but there's a scene where Woody challenges Buzz to prove that he can fly, and he doesn't fly. He falls with style, but he makes it look real good. Buzz Lightyear is cold, is confident, bold, and incompetent. He's very, very capable of him in his own mind. And he's reaching for things he clearly should not be reaching for. I would not give him a gun or a pilot's license. Least of all at the same time. Peter Gibbons from Office Space. I would advise very, very carefully that while Office Space is very, very good to illustrate failing upwards, don't take the career advice from this movie because he commits crimes. But before he commits crimes, it's a great example of failing upwards. He's capable, charismatic, underperformer. He basically just has a mental break at a certain point and starts kicking down cubicle walls. So, and then they want to give him a promotion for not working. So that's the emotional energy we're trying to harness here. But before we dive into the steps on how to fail upwards, I just want to give a little inside management heads. Any managers in the room right now? There's a few. Good. Glad to hear it. I'm feeling less alone now. Thank you. I think you're going to recognize this space, and that is that from the management side, I mentioned before, there is no reason to promote a good employee. There just isn't. there is every reason to keep them satisfied and productive in their current place. You may get a pay raise, you may get Cliff Bars, you may get PTO, but you're not going to get a job increase on working hard. Personal story that I did not share yet is my first paying job was a cashier at a department store. And at that job, I was like, I'm going to work hard and get promoted. So I was the best cashier they had in about 3 months, and I asked for promotion. And they said, why would we promote you? You're the best cashier we have. So there is no management, and corporate structures are incentivized to not promote you based on the merit of your work. You got to color outside the lines if you want to be promoted. And how you demonstrate that. Again, management does not know what they're hiring for most of the time. They have duties and tasks, but they don't know how to describe the qualities of management. They look for examples. They look for real world situations that they can draw upon to say, hey, that's an example of management. The way you would illustrate that is with contrast. If you want to truly give the understanding that you're ready to move up into management, then you need to show the difference from your current role. And failing upwards indicates, in this context, a kind of drop here and a rise here, so the contrast is more obvious. Does that make sense? Kinda? Okay. Not everyone is asleep. Good to know. Okay. So that's kind of the background. We're almost there, promise, because I got some prerequisites for you. Sorry. I do compliance now, so this matters. To fail upwards, you're going to have to get yourself in a very specific mindset with like what you're going to try to accomplish. Nice to have is experience. Now, what I mean by that is nice to have experience in management before you apply for it. Not necessary, it's nice. But you should have some background knowledge on the type of work you're wanting to get to. So if it's like you should have some understanding of what the job is like in a practical day-to-day sense. But you need to have a goal state. You can't just do this without having a goal. You got to have a goal. I think the last hour before me was all about that, in fact. Nice to have is a startup mentality. Treat yourself like a project. Treat yourself like not the job, not the company, not the role. Treat yourself as the thing you're working on leveling up. That'll help. But you should have a willingness to work outside business hours to get that done. It's going to be really hard to fit that into a business day, what I'm about to describe. And you need to be good. You need to be less good at your current job and risk it. We all, whether we like it or not, we're defined by the work we do. We all have day jobs which we identify as part of who we are. And you got to be willing to let your ego take a bruise or two in service of your greater goals. And then the last nice to have is friends, nice places. If you've got a friend in management, that definitely is a very big deal. That does help. But you should have acquaintances in management. They should at least know your name. That's the goal, is that they know your name, they know what you do. But you need to have a high place with people in it to start with. Now, why I say that is because I actually had consultants, come and ask me how do I get better at my job with consultancy. It's like, I don't know. Your management structure is over there. I have no idea how you rise in that space. You have to be. This process only truly serves people who are in-house and working to rise in-house. So, with that said, okay. I still got time. Whatever. Failing upwards. Phase 1. Here's how we do it. Phase 1 is all about laying the groundwork for the steps to come. This one's a fairly short list of steps in the practical sense. It starts off with begin to power down. And what I mean by that is if you're an overachiever, if you work really hard at your job, stop that. Stop that right here. Right here is where you stop working hard. I recognize so many workaholics with the nervous laughter right now. So many. And if if you're already powered down, good job. You're way ahead of the game. Keep at it. Meet your KPIs, be employable, do all the things you need to do. Just don't be a superstar anymore. Stop it right now. And next step right there is to immerse yourself in the next steps culture. So if it's management you're looking for, go to management meetups. Meetup.com, for example, has like these after hours, like just groups of people who just hang out and discuss what concerns them or interests them. Sometimes it's in a hotel bar, sometimes it's in a hotel conference room. Sometimes stuff like that. Tech conferences, if you're trying to break in, BSides is great for that, right? So immerse yourself in the culture. Don't worry about the technical or professional skills. Just kind of get the lingo, get the mental space of this. And then while you're in the process of improving yourself, also work on your personal charisma. I can recommend, for example, a YouTube channel called Charisma on Command. It's goofy to think about working on how to network with people, but I promise you that's actually what we're doing here mostly, is just like we're going to be working people. This is a social engineering space. So work on joint, get good with the Social Engineering Club, get good with Charisma on Command YouTube channel. I have tons of resources in the back of the slide deck, so feel free to ask me annoying questions about them because I want to discuss that. That's so super important. The goal with phase 1, though, is you're employable, but you're not a rising star yet. Phase 2, this is the hard yards. This is where the work comes in. And this is also the longest point. This can take months, and this is extremely, extremely relative to each individual. The first phase is super easy. You just be better. This step, you start making moves. And it's going to be reliant on your ability to read the room and to read the space. If you do this wrong, then you run certain risks. So be very, very careful and only step where you're comfortable stepping. Quietly do the next thing without permission. You may remember my personal story about when I built that infrastructure without permission. Well, yeah, that's an example. Just do so in a way that is non-disruptive. Now, if you're breaking into management, then there are management tasks that do not need a manager to do them. For example, like maybe you can help organize the sprint calendar, or maybe you can do some other like administrative tasks that the manager hates. These are examples. But do them without permission. But it's really critical right here, and this is where the mistakes come from in failing upwards. Don't make noise about it. Don't make noise about it. Don't be loud about it. Don't be proud about it. Don't share this with your boss. Don't socialize that you're doing all this extra work. That makes you a good employee. That does not make you a rising star. That makes you a good employee. They go in the extra yard. You're going to get an extra 4% bonus on your paycheck this next year. Do it quietly here. That time will come. That time is phase 3. Spoilers. Make yourself familiar with the next steps peer group and to the management. So if you don't already have connections inside the inner circle you're trying to penetrate, that's where you start making yourself familiar with them. That's where they need to be familiar with you. And the goal is that they're familiar with you. They know your name, they know your job. They don't know what you had for dinner, and you're not necessarily friends, but they at least know who you are, because that's going to come in handy later. And then here's where you start doing more and more of the next job. After the step 1 part, you're going to be working towards increasing and increasing and increasing the amount of work you're doing that's not your job. And while you're doing that, don't burn out. Don't burn out, and let go of some of the things that are less important in your paying job that you're doing now. So, phase 2 goal is, if you're doing this right, over time, everyone just feels like you're doing a better job over here than over there. Present job it's okay, but you're doing some interesting stuff over here. That's the goal. Making sense so far? Okay, good. So, phase 3. This is where it gets real. This is where it gets awkward. So, do not begin phase 3 until everyone is comfortable and confident in your space. If you're doing job here and no one's mad, then you're ready. And also, you need to convince yourself too, just to be entirely clear. So here's the point of no return. Step 1, invite yourself or shadow someone into conversations or meetings you are not invited to. If this can be as simple as, I can give a personal example. I only know my own story, right? An example would be like you're a technical person and you need to provide technical feedback on a budget discussion. You don't belong there. You're not a CFO. You're not a financial comptroller. So why are you there? Well, you're there as a subject matter expert. But what if you actually want to break into finance? Do both. So that's an example of what I'm talking about. Get into these meetings. 1, 2, go slow, go carefully. Just shadow someone and just walk in with them. And when you do this, if you've done phase 2 correctly, no one's gonna be noisy about this. No one's gonna be upset about this. And by doing this, you're getting the social proof. Because as soon as you go through one meeting, just one, without anybody complaining, they have approved you. Whether they mean to or not, they have approved you. You've penetrated the circle. Now you begin doing less of the current role and more of the next one. Because at this point, you've actually gotten inside that circle of trust. because you've been working quietly over here. I told you quietly it was going to be useful, right? Here's where it's useful. You've been working quietly over here that everyone just assumes you should be in the meeting now. Now you're in these meetings by default. Now at this point, you can start missing your KPIs. You can start missing your performance indicators. And who cares about your annual review now? At this point, you're doing 2 jobs. They're going to measure you on 2 jobs? No, they're not. It's not about your job anymore. It's about your paycheck. That's different. Here's where you create some carefully constructed noise. Express interest and intent to move upward to that inner circle that you've just joined by default. So you're in these meetings now. You're doing this work now. And here's where you say, you know what? I'm just really liking this team. Can I join? Just, can I be part of the clubhouse? And one or two things is going to happen. They're either going to talk amongst themselves, or they're going to send you to HR. And HR is not success. HR is what failure looks like. The bad failure, not the good failure. So that's because if you've done phase 2 correctly, then in phase 3, at this point, you should be able to see them think it over. You should be able to see them work out like how you would fit and what you would do and if you've got a clear plan on what role to take, just give them details on what you would do. Explain how you would do this. If they ask, they will ask if they care, and if you're in the circle trust that you say you are. But you got to wait. You got to wait and let them come to a decision. And when they come to that decision, they're either going to give you some informal interview or a straight up job if you've done it really well. But they might also decide, no, talk to HR. At that point, start applying elsewhere. Now, I think we've all been in the position, maybe not you, I think you're a little too young to apply for jobs yet. You might have a few years to go. But most people in this room have had to change jobs at a certain point. That day will come. And when you do, you're always like, why did you change jobs? Well, we all have different reasons. Here's one. I've been working at this, I have this job I want to do, and I've been doing it for 6 months, and they don't have a role for me now. So now I'm looking elsewhere. It's a natural progression into that role, whether you have done it on paper or not. You now have the skill set and talent and, frankly, drive to go do the job for somewhere else. And they should know that. They should absolutely know that. So either they're going to keep you or not keep you based on that. So phase 3 goal is you're better in this work, and we'll do it here or elsewhere. You're going to do it one way or the other. You can pay me and save a lot of time and effort, or someone else will pay me and you'll have to replace 2 jobs now. So with that said, those are the phases, and it goes by kind of fast. I wanted to give this most of my attention. There's going to be questions, but I just want to do a quick summary real quick. Failing upwards is commonplace. Might as well work for you. Literally happens every day. We all have bosses that are doing this now. It happens generally from a combo of normal human behavior, which we frankly can't avoid from doing. The reason why it happens everywhere is because it's human nature. And you can do it yourself if you are familiar with some social engineering tactics and a few specific social cues that will guide you into that process. And also, disclaimer, it is an extremely personal experience. Your story is going to be different from mine, but this is just what I've seen work for others. And yeah, don't come in on Saturday and fall with style. I had to be glib at the end. I'm sorry, guys. I wanted a better joke. It's the best I could find, short notice. I promised you a lot too many resources. Feel free to screen cap this for those on the internet. I will share this presentation with literally anybody who asks. But I just have some articles on the far left, got some media in the center, and some books on the right. A few quick call-outs. I recommend specifically from the YouTube channel Charisma on Command. Literally any and all of that is going to help you network and communicate with people better. They actually use like pop icons and like Marvel superheroes to illustrate how people talk to each other. It's really fun. Books, I'd recommend What Everybody Is Saying, an ex-FBI agent's guide to speed reading people, body language expert. Follow this man, stalk him on the internet, read his books, he's incredible. Things like Where People's Feet Are Pointing can help you understand when you can talk and when you shouldn't. Stuff like that. Influence, the psychology of persuasion, 6 principles of influence that are used for literally every part of success. And yeah, I'm down there in the bottom right, that's me. I'm on LinkedIn sometimes. I usually just post memes from Twitter on LinkedIn. That's kind of what I do. I think I gave myself something stupid like the tactical CISO as a title. And I know I'm out of time, but are there questions? Am I out of time?
No, you've got some time.
Oh, I got time.
You have time. So, Wes was absolutely wonderful, and he sent me his presentation, and it was much longer. So, I had to give him the really bad news and say, you gotta cut it. So, if you have a question, realize that we do have a virtual audience as well. So,
That's true.
you know, if you ask a question, can you just repeat it
Yes.
before you answer it?
Happy to. Happy to.
So, ask questions.
I'm not leaving this podium until I get one good question. Okay.
How long do you wait in that purgatory? I'm doing manager jobs, but I'm not an actual manager. Like, how do you set measurement or baseline of like,
Ooh.
how long is too long?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. The question is, how long do you wait in phase 2 with holding that like manager workload without a manager title? So, that's what I was talking about with it being a really, really personal experience with failing upwards. Because for my story, because again, my privilege, I probably got it too quick. But in my case, it was a period of I think about nearly 6 or 8 months. It can go slow or can go fast. It depends on who you know, how comfortable you are with the organization, how formal the organization is. It depends on like how many stakeholders are involved in the role that you're seeking. For example, if it's like got like a finance and regulatory requirements, then suddenly it's a lot more complicated. So it can and then I mentioned body language a lot. I mentioned reading people and social engineering skill sets. Being able to know when to speak to people and when not to speak to people and to what degree you can push is going to be critical to how quickly that process goes. So it's going to be months. Expect months. But you can't really overdo that step. Because if you're in that step too long, it just means you need to start looking. You just go straight to the next job because they haven't given you it already. So, cool. That's a good question. Who's got it? Yes. I'll be honest with you. I'm having a really hard time hearing you. Can you stand up, mask off, and speak louder, please? Okay.
A lot of social interactions in your job. How it's different in a remote position? I mean, you don't have many opportunities to meet people like not only on official meetings.
Oh, that is an extremely good question. How do you do this remotely? So, to that point, I actually did this remotely. So my story is actually a story that I got through remote. Now, that's harder. That's a lot harder. Establishing rapport over remote sessions is the challenge. A couple quick tips just to kind of help that process along. I can give you a couple of things right now. For one, is everyone sits like this. Don't do that. Sit sideways a little bit, because it's less confronting. It's already just your body position while you're on webcam will actually help put the audience at ease, whether that's a stakeholder, whether that's just a one-on-one. Just work on your body posture to help increase the level of rapport. But additionally, that's why the principles of influence are in the slide deck, because you have to get that reciprocity. You have to get that give and take, because the goal is to penetrate that inner circle, right? So you do that by establishing rapport, and you establish a give and take relationship, which you do with, explaining like, your personal failures. I've done this, it didn't work, but man, I learned a lot, and then they're going to want to feel to do the same. And that just takes longer, but you got to work on the social, on your presence on webcam will help a lot.
And just so you know, our 2 o'clock presentation is all about remote interviewing.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. That's a great question. What other questions are there? Oh, back there. Yes.
How do you handle the whole I need to know you X job before you get Y job?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay. The question is, sorry, can you repeat it one more time for me?
I need to know you do job X before I can get
Okay. So how do you overcome the barrier of I need to know you can do this before you can do this? Okay. So that's where phase 2 is largely built on, is the idea that you're demonstrating these skills that are either direct or related to that threshold. If you're getting that barrier over a period of time, if you're in phase 2 so long, like maybe too long, and and someone's saying, I need to see this before you get this, it means you've jumped the gun. It means you've asked too soon. This is where you keep it on the down low that you're doing all this stuff. You just quietly do that because you let the expectations build around you. You let your legend grow. The goal is that you're telling people that you're not telling people that you want the job. You're showing them, and once you've done it, and everyone expects you to do this job, then when you ask, it's organic. So that's a good point.
I was just going to add to that. A conference of this size does not happen overnight. It's a year-long remote process. We have our own doc, we have our own security, we have so many different components that is not only technical skills, but people skills, leadership skills, and you are going to get more challenged being involved in a conference of this size and being able to work on those skills, build your network, and then you can say, oh, by the way, this last weekend I ran the knock, and someone goes, you ran a knock? I didn't know you could do that, or something like that. So do not overlook volunteering opportunities as something in your career development.
Very good, very good. That's exactly what I'm talking about with getting immersed in the culture of that job. This is exactly how you do it, is the volunteer opportunities. It's a good point. Excellent, excellent. What other questions are there? Anything else on mind? Another one. Perfect. Hit me.
And then, so you talked about when you're trying to break into a new
Oh, breaking.
to an existing.
Oh, like, okay, so the question is, how do you modify this process for changing laterally into a different field? Okay. So the process is, I got to admit, I kind of gave that disclaimer earlier that this process doesn't work as well for that, but there are principles you can use for it. It comes back down to how to penetrate that inner circle. That still applies the same way. But in that case, if it's an entirely new field and you have zero experience in that field, then it comes back down to the example, like for volunteer work is a really good example. Things that how to get you into the space where you can talk about it confidently, like you're an expert. You don't have to like demonstrate that you do the job. You can just talk like you know what you're talking about. Just be really good at faking it, in a matter of speaking, through some extensive personal experience, shall we say. And once you can do that long enough, then you can start quietly like just join the conversation. At a certain point, there's just gonna feel weird not to hire you. So.
If I could just add to that, you would not be surprised, or you will be surprised at how many different industries are represented at this conference. Healthcare, finance, retail, hospitality, networking within this industry through the conferences. You would be surprised as you're working next to, the CISO for Bank of America, or, the CFO of a healthcare conglomerate. Building your network is another way of crossing from one industry to the other.
True story. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Yes. Another question.
So you were talking about threat management and trying to learn social engineering skills through that. I've watched those videos, but it's a really hard. I have a really hard time developing those muscles to actually use those skills. How do you do that?
Okay. The question, if I've got this right, is I recommended some resources, Charisma on Command being one of them, but doing the things that they show is hard. Is that right? Okay, yeah, doing is hard. I completely agree. So that is where you have to be awkward. There is no substitute for that one, unfortunately. You got to get weird. But if you treat it as getting weird instead of getting wrong, then it suddenly becomes a game. And if you treat it like a game, you're just like, you got no stakes in this, right? Like, who's I mean, you're risking your ego, but what are the real table stakes of you going out and talking to someone? I mean, there's always that joke. It's like, well, if Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith can upload that computer virus to that alien mothership, then you can talk to that bartender. That's really what this is about. I mean, the muscles are hard to build, but the good news is they don't fade nearly as quickly as others. So You start slow. I mean, you've heard this advice, I know, but I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat it. You start slow. You work carefully through what you're comfortable doing. No more than you're comfortable doing. But get a little uncomfortable as you go. N+1 the whole way. Yeah, good question there. Did I answer that question? Okay. That's a fuzzy one. I like to make sure I'm clear on that. Anything else?
And just, I
Please.
keep saying it, volunteering. There are so many of the people who are in senior positions within BSides Las Vegas. They started watching all of the presentations in their hotel rooms 10 years ago. So they first started watching the videos, and then they came in folded t-shirts, and then they ran the reg team, and then they moved up to sponsor, and then they moved up to someplace else to the point that they're all now at senior executive positions within the organization. But then, guess what? They had the same parallel development within their jobs. So getting awkward with a bunch of people here who are weird really helps. I mean, I'm an introvert. I really am.
Yeah.
But you coming here and being with your tribe of weird people is totally cool.
You got to make it weird. You got to make it really weird. I mean, that's how this works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's give it up for Wes.